that good now?
That's better.
Okay. Good morning, Chairwoman Napolitano, Ranking Member Westerman, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the importance of fully utilizing harbor maintenance tax revenue to ensure the Army Corps of Engineers is able to maintain navigation channels and jetties at small ports in the Pacific Northwest and around the country. I'm here from Bandon, Oregon, which has a population of 3,112. I'm a commissioner at the Port of Bandon, and I'm a small business owner. I've been a commercial fisherman for most of my life. Now I primarily fish for tuna. Our region's tuna fleet includes about 600 boats that fish off of Oregon and Washington. My brother and I pack our boat with supplies for 2 weeks at a time and spend most of that time between 100 and 200 miles offshore. Because our boats are only capable of about 7 knots in heavy weather, and because we're so far offshore, if unsafe weather is forecast, we go into whatever port is closest. If the weather's really bad, our only safe course is downwind to whatever port is on that trajectory. This is where the term safe harbor comes from. When weather's bad, any harbor, large or small, is safer than being at sea. From a fisherman's perspective, every port, large and small, is important. Whether we can use a particular port for safe harbor has everything to do with the condition of the bar in the Pacific Northwest. The phrase crossing a bar may not be familiar to everyone here, but for the people in the Pacific Northwest that take boats out into the ocean, understanding this term is a matter of life and death. The bar is the term used where a hump is formed, where sediment builds up as the downstream river water comes up against the ocean swells. During ebb tides, river and tidal flows combine to create a stronger current that comes up against the incoming ocean swell. If the swell is large and the bar is shallow, the energy of the swell is tipped over, resulting in a breaker. Breakers are dramatically higher and steeper than the swell, and the life-threatening danger comes when a boat is attempting to cross the bar and encounters a sneaker wave that is larger than expected. The wave builds and steepens, and the boat goes out of control as it essentially turns into a surfboard, goes broadside, and rolls over. This dangerous condition is referred to as a breaking bar. And it wasn't until I came to DC the first time advocating for dredging of the bars of our small ports that I realized breaking bars is a phenomenon mostly unique to the Pacific Northwest. Until that realization, I couldn't understand how budget after budget could zero out small port dredging when so many lives were at stake. Now, there are a couple of ways to minimize the threat of a breaking bar. One way is for the Army Corps of Engineers to build jetties that steer the current a few degrees off of the dominant swell direction. This was done on every bar in the Pacific Northwest many decades ago, but today, most of those jetties are in dire need of repair and are getting less and less effective. Another way to minimize the deadliness of a breaking bar is to regularly dredge out the sediment hump that builds up every year from the torrential rains that characterize the Pacific Northwest coast. Now, there's one thing that both of these remedies have in common, and that is funding. The Portland District of the Army Corps of Engineers does a good job of maintaining our jetties and dredging our navigation channels given the resources Congress provides. But when sufficient funding for these activities are not available, as is often the case for small ports, the bar shallows and breaks and lives are lost. As a commercial fisherman, safety is paramount, but for thousands of others on land, their economic livelihood also is tied to the maintenance of navigation channels and jetties. In Oregon, there are 15 communities with small ports. Nearly all of these are located in rural areas. In every one of those communities, the port is the equivalent of their anchor business. The Port of Bandon recently commissioned a study of the impact of our port on the local economy. It found that $52 million of economic benefit is generated annually as a result of the dredging that gives us access to the sea. And nearly $5 million in federal tax payments are returned to the Treasury. So let me highlight this. It costs about $500 a year to dredge the bar.
Not 500, you mean five, you said 500.
500 million, I'm sorry. Excuse me, wow. Okay, yes, thank you, Congressman. $500,000 to dredge the channel. And in return, the Treasury receives $5 million. So a 10-to-1 return on investment, which I imagine everybody would like to see in their IRs. Operation and maintenance of our nation's navigation infrastructure is a federal responsibility, yet small ports around the country have to fight like heck for funding that will allow the Army Corps of Engineers to do its job. It's a real shame that it wouldn't have to be this way if the HMT funds were fully utilized. Due to the leadership of this committee, we've seen a substantial increase in the amount of harbor maintenance tax revenue that is dedicated to dredging and jetty maintenance. But a lot of this money is still being used to fund other government programs or to balance the federal budget. This is why I appreciate your continuing efforts to get to full utilization of the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. I also appreciate the opportunity to talk about what funding means to me, my community, and for rural communities around the country.
All right, sir.
So what I'm really here to ask
You're
for,
over your time.
I'm sorry.